You are now listening to The Jason Damico Show.
Yeah.
Greetings, folks. Welcome back to The Jason Damico Show. So happy to be here and be back in the studio. Want to thank our special distributors, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Simplecast for getting the word out. Thanks to Telegram as well. We've recently started broadcasting to Telegram and Rumble with the recorded version. So happy to have all of our folks there at Telegram and Rumble. And I am so blessed and excited to say our guest today's bio and kind of do a nice little introduction here for him. We've had a lot of guests on the show. Definitely, this is somebody that you guys have heard of. If you haven't, then check your pulse, because this brother's been around for a while and is in the fabric of the American music scene, and he is nothing short of an American music icon, pulling the original Grand Funk Railroad to the top of the charts with his contributions as a frontman, songwriter, and guitarist. To date, he's sold more than 30 million records worldwide, as well as garnered 16 gold and platinum certified records. And 50 years later, he's still commanding stages with the same intensity, with his American band performing epic hits that defined a generation, such as I'm Your Captain, Closer to Home, Bad Times, Some Kind of Wonderful, Foot Stompin' Music, Heartbreaker, We're an American Band, and many more. The name needs no introduction, but please welcome to the show, Mark Farner. It's so great to have you.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it, Jason. Good to be here with you, buddy.
It's great. It's great to be here with you as well. And as we were just kind of alluding to right before we went on the air, it's been a few years. I had the pleasure of meeting you at one of your shows at, I believe it was Saloon Studios in Western North Carolina right before the pandemic. And we ended up in passing after the show, we ended up talking in the lobby for, I think, till 2 or 3 in the morning, and just talking about music. And it was real bucket list item for me that I can now check off the list. So I really appreciate your time and just your graciousness and hanging out with me.
My pleasure, buddy. Always good to talk to somebody who's genuinely interested and who has that inward drive, because you're not just driven by what your ears and eyes are hearing and seeing.
Right.
You have something intuitive within you, brother Jason, and I dig that. I focus on that.
Well, I appreciate that. And whatever it is, it started when I was listening to your records at 2, 3, 4 years old, because I have, my parents got me raised on the Grand Funk catalog, your solo material from Some Kind of Wonderful record, to Wake Up, to all of that. And even up to, some of your stuff in the 2000s and beyond. So
right on.
Rock
God
on,
bless your
baby.
Parents, dude.
Yeah. Well, we have so much that I'd love to cover today. It's virtually and physically impossible to hit every nook and cranny of your career, so I'm not even going to attempt to. But right. I would love to just kind of start with your beginning stages. You have a really unique story with kind of how you got into music. And I don't know how much you've gone into detail with how you started playing music. I can't really find much in all of the interviews that you've done of kind of like your early teen years before the Terry Knight time and whatnot. But I'd love to just kind of take a few moments to talk about how you actually got into singing and playing some instruments.
Yeah. Well, it is in my family bloodline, both on my mother's side and my father's side. My mother moved from Leachville, Arkansas, when she was 16 years old in 1940, moved to Flint, Michigan, and married my dad, who was a Flint, Michigan native. and he went to war. It was the Second World War, of course, and he was in the 7th Armored Division. He was a tank driver in the 7th Armored Division. And my mother was actually the first woman in the United States to ever weld on Sherman tanks, which was the variety of tank that my dad drove.
Wow.
She did that at Fisher Body in Flint, Michigan. And when my dad got out, he returned with 4 Bronze Stars. He was in 4 major battles.
Wow.
And a lot of tank drivers didn't get to see a second battle. So he was very, very, very fortunate. And we were very fortunate to have him in our lives, in our family, until I was 9 years old. And he died in a car train wreck. Him and a fellow fireman were killed at a railroad crossing in Flint. And it changed my life. But prior to his death, my mother and all of her family were all musical. I mean, the people that moved from Leechville, Arkansas to get jobs in the auto factories up here in Flint, Michigan, were Grandpa Cotton, Uncle Woody, Uncle Brian. My dad played guitar and saxophone. They all played like banjos and violins and guitars, and the women sang. It sounded like angels, a band of angels singing when them gals would get going. And they sang all like old gospel stuff and old country stuff. But that always was like a bread breaking time, you know. It was a meal. Everybody joined around and ate, and then they jammed till they couldn't jam no more. I mean, that it was it. And here I was, a little shaver, right wrapped in the middle. But I loved the music, but I remember always looking up at these big people, you know, because I'm standing down on the floor here, 4 or 5 years old, looking up at all these big people, and they're singing and playing these instruments. And it was just almost like surrealistic, because as I'm telling you, Jason, dude, I'm flashing back to when I was 4 years old, looking up and seeing those great big people. I'm thinking, wow. I didn't even think, you know, at the time, I didn't think about me growing up and being that big someday. I just thought, what the hell? These people are huge, you know. These people are huge, like aliens up there. But man, this music that they're making, holy smackerel. So I was very interested. But when I was in school, I was playing tuba. I started in the 5th grade. I went into band class, and I wanted to play a trombone just because I kind of liked the way them guys did this, you know. I was just, hey. And the guy says, well, we got enough trombone players. Why don't you move over here and just sit and grab one of these baritones? And so I did the baritone. Okay, I could probably do this. It's got the valves on. I didn't have the slide like I was looking for, but it had the valves, and I could blow the thing. And then the second day, dude, he comes to me and he says, Mark, he says, your lips fit that so good. I want you to try this mouthpiece. And he hands me this great big mouthpiece. And I go, well, what is this for? He says, that's for a tuba. He says, we need a tuba player, really. Worse than we need a baritone player, because we got 4 baritone players. So I blew into the thing, and he says, oh, perfect. Come on over here. And put me on the tuba. So I was, you know, 5th grade, playing the tuba, and 6th grade, 7th grade. I'm 3 years into this thing, man, and I'm like switching first chair with Chris Curtis and me, between the two of us, you know, switching back and forth. And it was a fun thing, because, you know, the drummers, they would always get in there and try to mess with us. And they would pour a pitcher of water down the big bell of the tuba. And of course, I'd get in there and go to blow it, and it goes, blah, 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 blah. You know, what the hell is this? And I opened the spit valve, and just water would be just pouring out of there. I look over, and those guys are going, oh, you know, cracking up. So then we'd steal the snares off of their snare drums. They'd get there and go, oh my God, where's my snares?
Right.
And we'd go there. Ooh,
Yeah.
So that had that going on. It was a lot of fun. It was always a lot of fun to be in any kind of music. And I had joined the choir class. I liked singing, and I was a tenor.
Yeah.
Choir. And we were marching, doing, you know, boom, 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 boom. Watch down the football field, the marching band. Here we are for junior varsity. And I'm looking, and there ain't no chicks looking at the marching band, dude. They are looking over at the tight ends.
Yeah, literally.
Yes. So I said, you know, I think next year I'm going to try out for football. And I tried out. The way that they qualified you was we did, the football field was fenced in. And, you know, the bleachers and everything. Mm-hmm. And the football coach, there was probably 40, 50 guys that showed up that wanted to play football. And he says, this is how we're going to do this. We're going to run you around the perimeter just outside the fence of this football field twice. And the first ones in are my football team. And he shot the gun, and we all took off. I was the second one in. So I really wanted to be on that football team. That guaranteed me a place on the team, dude.
Right.
And so, you know, so I, being kind of short in stature, I was just a little guy, but I was fast. So I was defensive linebacker over center. And, I loved to hear my name being called on that loudspeaker, dude. When I would make a tackle, that was Farner number 66 in on the tackle. So, man, I was loving playing ball. You know, the girls were looking at me, and they were calling my name. And I loved it because my mom and my stepdad were out in the bleachers rooting for me, cheering me on. And my mother saw how much I was influenced by that very fact of my name being called on the speaker. She said, boy, when they call your name out, you just shift into another gear. And I go, yeah, because I love that when they say my name. That's why I'm in on every tackle. I want to hear my name every time they open their mouth up there. And so anyway, I get hurt. We scrimmaged the high school team. The varsity kicked our asses and hurt us intentionally. They were being real mean. And anyways, I had water on the knee, and I couldn't run. I couldn't play ball. The doctor told my mother, no more track, no more football, not this year, maybe next year, but we'll have to see how that knee does, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, she felt so sorry for me, dude. She got me a guitar lesson, or 6 lessons.
Wow.
And rented an acoustic guitar for my 15th birthday present. That was what I got. So I started my guitar lessons, and the guy showed me how to, you know, cut my fingernails on my left hand. So that was the first thing. We'll get these fingernail clippers out. We'll get started with that. So I cut my nails. Then he teaches me how to tune the guitar. And I had enough of an ear for music from singing and being in the choir to where I could tell if I was in pitch or out of pitch. And that's how, you know, just kind of basic on the first lesson. And he showed me a little ditty, you know, and he was playing like the rhythm to it. And then the second lesson, he showed me the chords, and I'm playing the rhythm, and he's doing the ditty, you know? So he says, man, you're picking this up quick. So I do a third lesson, and we're doing real good back and forth. He says, man, I'm amazed at how fast you're picking it up. And I look and I said, I'm amazed at it. I didn't know that I could, be this far along so fast. Anyways, he, between the time he went home that day and it was time for my next lesson, he calls my mother and he told her there would be no more lessons because he had a hunting accident. It was bird season in Michigan. We had ringneck pheasant season, opened October 20th, and he shot himself in the foot with a 12 gauge. So,
oh my God.
There was no more lessons. He said, just tell Mark to go up to the high school and hang with the guys that his sister, I told him that my sister knew these guys in this band up there and they had instruments and, he said, go watch them. Tell him to go up, hang out with those musicians and watch them play. Cause that's all he has to do is just see how they're doing it. And I'm sure that he could do it. So that's what I did. I took his word for it. And these guys kind of took me in because I was the young guy, they were high school guys and they were 2 years in front of me, but they took me in like I was one of them. And I learned the chords and I could sing, but I couldn't play and sing at the same time. So they would run my cord back to the amplifier that had the light on, but the cord wrapped around the handle and just hung over the back of the amp. It wasn't plugged in, but they were playing. So nobody knew I wasn't really playing. And I was singing, I was singing in the microphone. I was doing the singing job. And I learned during these stages of, my picking it up and advancement with music, I learned that the higher I sang, the higher in pitch that I sang, and I go way up, and then everybody in the room would be looking over at me. Who is that singing that? And so I said, they like that high stuff. I'm learning this, right?
Interesting.
Yeah. And people would be dancing and we would be doing something, some Motown stuff or some kind of dance tune to have them out on the floor. And I would just take it up into the stratosphere. Just instead of following the melody, I'd go on up and hit some notes up there and they'd all like turn around and look at me. And I'm going, boy, this is working. This here is working for me. I'm learning. Nice. And that's how I kind of got started from the love of, being involved with my family. And I love the music part, but I love the eating part. Every Sunday we would either have Southern fried chicken with some hockey puck dumplings or sloppy joes, one of the two, but it was always great food and there was a lot of it. And my family could show enough cook, man. So I always associated, playing music with eating. And when we play music with the band, we'd always go get a hamburger. This is back when McDonald's had fresh cut fries. They first opened. This is when they first opened.
Right.
And they had the skin on French fries, fresh cut. Man, it wasn't nothing better. And they didn't have genetically modified potatoes back then, brother. They were real potatoes.
No Monsanto.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
So that was a big part of it. And I just kept going, playing wedding receptions, playing parties, wherever we could pass the hat. We never charged to play music. We'd always get there and send the hat around. If you liked that we were here for you, if you liked the fact that we were the guys playing the music all night long and you guys were dancing to it, please help us get home by putting a little money in this hat. And that's what we would do. A little pass the hat. And we always had plenty of money to get home, even, to buy some beer or, whatever the guys wanted. They were older than me and they were drinkers.
Right. Well,
They turned my ass into a drinker.
it's funny because I actually have a similar background when I was in high school where I was homeschooled for a while, and in middle school was pretty much homeschooled. So I ended up going to public high school. That was like my first public school experience was high school.
Uh-huh.
And for me, when I was a freshman, it was similar where a lot of the upperclassmen just kind of gravitated towards me for some reason. And I wasn't quite as bored with them for again, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And we were all into the same type of music, and they got me turned on to playing in the bands with them. And some
Uh-huh.
of them lived in our neighborhood, so I didn't have to take the bus. They would drive me in, or I'd get a ride back home with them. So it's kind of funny hearing that story because I can relate, even though it was in a completely different time frame and completely different school system. There's nothing like having those 2 to 3 year old upperclassmen that kind of show you the ropes. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank God, man. For sure. It's because of their willingness and their desire to help you along, man. That's what got to me.
Yeah.
First of all, they were my sister's friends, and she was a clown. They loved her. They taught her how to go. So she'd sit back and play that little lick on the drums, and they'd jam to it until the drummer showed up, and then he'd take over, you know. But that kind of thing, it doesn't happen to enough people. But I am happy to hear that we have the same kind of background when it comes to getting into it, and the help that we receive from the older classmen.
Now, let me ask you this too, while we're kind of in the high school phase of your life, and I'm sure this is when things are going to start revving up in the story. When you were in high school, there was some incident. I don't know exactly what it was, but I read that you got laid off from high school essentially, and how that was really what sparked you into propelling really full time into music before you were 18. So I thought that was really interesting, and wanted to kind of get a little bit more information on really what happened and how you just started playing. It sounded like on a weekly basis professionally around that age.
Yeah. Well, what happened was, when I got hurt and the doctor told my mother no more football, no more track, and I got my guitar lessons. I was 15 years old. Well, then when I was had turned 16, and I'm driving myself to school in my 49 Chevrolet that I bought for $14, dude. Yeah, my friend had it. And he says, I'm going to get rid of that old 49. He says, I'm getting me a 55 Chevrolet. And my other friend that was hanging with us, he looks at me, I look at him. I said, well, how much you want for it? He says, I'll tell you what, I'll auction it off to you guys right now. How much money you got in your pocket? Well, my buddy starts bidding on it. He says, I'll give you $5 for it. I said, I'll give you $8 for it. And my buddy goes to 10, and I go to 12, and he goes to 13. I says, okay, this is it. I knew I had $14 in my pocket. Right. I said, I'll give you $14. That's my final offer. And so Dennis, my buddy, he couldn't go any higher. He says, well, it's yours, Farner. Go ahead. So anyways, I'm driving this 49 Chevrolet to school and to practice. And when I got hurt, not only when I left the football team, not only me, but a bunch of my buddies left the football team at the same time. They said, if you're not playing Farner, then I'm not playing.
Wow.
I mean, this is why we were an undefeated team.
Wow.
We were friends. We hung together. We smoked cigarettes together. We drank beer illegally together. we hung together. We really were friends, and we were so close that nobody could beat us, and nobody. So when I had to quit, and those players quit too, well, the football coach looked at me as like, oh, he's the ringleader, and he's taken my team away from me. But I didn't realize this until one day we were at the high school. It was one of those days, it's kind of cold outside, and Holy Rosary, this school that was down on Richfield Road, they did their first half of the day at Holy Rosary School. And then the second half, they finished at Kersley High School. And so the Holy Rosary bus pulls up out front, and this football coach has a bunch of his guys standing around over by the front door there where these kids would file in. And he looks over at me, and I'm standing over by the library with my friends, and we are standing around this radiator where the heat is coming from,
Yeah.
And he hollers over to me and he says, "Hey, Farner, move your boys." And I look back across, he's probably 10, 15 yards from me. And I just said, "These are not my boys." I said, "If you want them moved, talk to them. Talk to them directly. You have my permission." He comes over. Oh my God. He didn't like the way I talked to him. And he grabs me by the nape of the neck, and he wheels me around up against the wall, which is a brick wall in this school, incidentally. And it had a brass picture frame of the superintendent of schools was in there, had a light on it and everything, but the frame stuck out away from the wall. And when he threw me against the wall, my head ricochets off this brass picture frame. And dude, I reached back. He still got a hold of me. I reached back because my head is hurting. It is in pain. And I felt wet back there. And I went, "Oh no." And as I'm bringing my hand down, I see the blood all over my hand. And I was so pissed. I just, boom, I nailed him in the eye. Down he went. And I had some rings on this hand, and it unzipped his eyebrow, and a flap of skin fell down over his eye. And he was trying to get up, and he finally makes it to his feet. And he starts throwing these haymakers at me, and I'm ducking, and I'm timing it out because I'm going to hit him again, and here he comes. He swings, and I draw back like I'm going to nail him. And my buddy, Derry Speck, grabs my arm. He says, "Farner, you're in enough trouble already. Come on, get away from there, man. You don't want no more of this." So anyways, they threw me out of school. I went back with an attorney who was really not much help for me. He was a friend of my mother's, a high school friend of my mother's, but he kind of turned on me in the meeting with the board, the school board, because I'm sitting across the table from the guy, from the football coach, algebra teacher, and my attorney sitting next to me. And they start talking about, well, what are we going to do to get Mr. Farner back in school? This algebra teacher stands to his feet, and he says, "I'll tell you what, you let him back in school, I will resign." And then my attorney he says, "Yeah, he has got long hair and sideburns." He just it's like, well, if that ain't something, here's my attorney that's supposed to help me get back in school, and now he's turning on me. I just turned around and I walked out of there. I was livid. I was very mad.
Yeah.
Walks out to the main road, And this attorney pulls up in his car and he rolls down the window and he says, "Come on, Mark, get in." And I says, "You don't want me in your car. You do not want me in your car, mister." I said, "Just get the hell away from me. Get on down the road. I'll find my way home. Don't worry about me." I said, "You are no friend of mine, and you definitely don't want me in that car." So he takes off. And I go home. I tell my mom what happened, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, they put me in summer school. Well, I was in summer school, but it was night school. And most of my gigs were night gigs. The opportunities that I would have to play were
Right.
at night. You
Right.
know? So I go to my mom and stepdad and I said, "You guys, this is not working out for me." I said, "I appreciate that you got me into the school, and I appreciate that you love me enough and care about me enough to want me to have a high school diploma for whatever that's worth." I said, "I don't think a diploma is going to help me much because I'm going to stay in music. I'm having fun. I'm learning. I'm getting paid. I'm making money now doing this. And when I'm in this night school, I'm missing out on my money-making opportunities. And I believe that the music is going to get me a lot further than whatever it is they're trying to teach me in night school." So they said, "Okay, you're old enough to make that decision on your own. We're behind you. You go ahead and you have our blessing." Boom. That was it. I was on the way right then. And that I was 17 years old. I started playing with Dick Wagner when I was 18, playing rhythm guitar. Of course, Dick Wagner was Alice Cooper's guitar player in Michigan. Wow. And he was a great guitar player, songwriter. And I played with the Bossman. That was Dick Wagner's band, with Lanny Renicky and with Warren Keith and Pete Woodman. Great guys, great bunch of guys to learn from, all older, of course, by several years. But they took me in just like the guys that took me in, in high school to show me initially how to play these chords and how to play this instrument. So I had a great relationship. And one night we came home from a gig, and Dick lived in Saginaw, and his apartment was across from the factory, and one of the big factories up there, Delco. And he says, he tells his wife, "We're going to stay up and play guitar for a little while." So she goes to bed and the kids go to bed, and we come in there, playing our electric guitars, of course, without any amplifiers or without any cords plugged into them. Right. And it was, just loud enough for him and I to hear. And he's showing me some chord inversions. He says, "You might want to use this inversion of an E chord. If you're here and you're gonna bar A," he says, "this one is a quick E right in the same position." And he just switches his fingers. I goes, "Ooh, yeah, I want to learn that one," So he's showing me all these inversions. And I just came right out that night and I said, "Wagner, you've written, I don't know how many songs, and I want to pick your brain. How do you do it? Where do you come up with all this music?" He says, "It's in you. It's inside." I said, "Inside?" He says, "Yeah." And he reaches over and he touches my chest. He says, "It's right here." He says, "And you can write songs too, Farner." And I go, "I can?" It's like he put the key in there and just turned it. And
wow.
Clicked. And that night, Jason, I sat up and I wrote Heartbreaker. That was my first song. And it was on the first album. And I still play it today. And people love that song.
Oh, yeah.
So that was really what kind of got me. And I was making money, I was making enough to support myself and pay rent and pay for the laundromat too, dude.
Rolling.
Yeah.
Rolling. Well, it's funny because that was one of the questions that I had for you was, what is kind of your creative and writing process? How did it start? And what was your first song that you wrote? So it's you kind of knocked out a couple of bullet points right there with just talking about that. What an incredible story, though. I had no idea that you guys knew each other from that point, like way back then. It's so amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And the Michigan music scene was, this is back before the deregulation of the FCC. So families owned all of the radio and television stations, U.S. families. And the disc jockeys had pretty much, they could do whatever they wanted to. They could play whatever music they wanted to, as long as it went along with, a playlist and it was similar to the playlist. They were welcome to bring in new music and to test it out and see how the audience, the listeners, if they like this or if they like that, and the DJs were kind of our, they held our community together. They were kind of the leaders. They advanced us rock and rollers, with the music. They'd take a vacation and go out to California and come back and play some song they heard when they were out there. I heard this when I was in LA, blah, blah. And then they spin the record and we're going, wow, that's great. Well, it's part of what made music great back then. And it's a missing element today. As you know, the radios, all the stations got bought up. Well, most of the stations, I'm telling you, the majority of the radio stations are owned by Clear Channel or some corporate conglomerate that has no interest in what the community that you live in, what our musical likes are. They're just going to play whatever's on this playlist that some guy over in New York City is programming a playlist for 5,000 stations. And you just happen to be in a town where that's what's playing today, on the radio. So back then we had people's influence. We had, free reign, and rock and roll was free, and you could hear it in the lyrics. You could hear it in the way people played their guitars. You could hear it in the community that we all, passed records and hey, check this out. And I remember going into WTAC in Flint, Michigan, and telling Bob Dell about Deep Purple, about the song Hush.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And he said, I never heard of that. And we just happened to have the 45. So we said, well, you ought to see what the people think about this. And he spun Hush and was like, holy crap, man. Yeah. And he got a lot of great feedback and phone calls. And that's really the way it was running back then. So not as difficult if you had some talent. Not as difficult as what it is today. There were no asses to kiss because it was just built on your genuine ability to do what you could do, period. And that's what Dick Wagner helped me to understand about songwriting, about I could do it. He just had to tell me I could, evidently.
Yeah.
So, but that whole era back then, I was being fed all this music, that I was listening to on the radio, and it was coming across the river from Rosalie there down at CKLW in Windsor, Ontario, and she was playing Motown and all this R&B music, and because we were going to dances and playing our instruments at these dances, we were playing those Motown songs. We were playing, Wooly Bully and playing the Yardbirds and whatever was on that would get people out on the dance floor. We would learn those songs, and it was part of our development. We had to come through these various stages of learning how to play this. And, oh, we could play that. That's a little bit harder, but we can learn that, you know? So the development, was there, and it was all friendly. It wasn't trying, you know, I thank God I've never had to try to pigeonhole my song that's on my mind and make it fit a certain groove or make it fit. Oh man, when disco came in, holy crap, that was like, oh, forget about it. Who would bow to that God? Not this man. I hated disco. I really did.
Yeah.
And I used to wear the shirt, man. Disco sucks. I wore it proudly. But you know, there's all these other influences when the deregulation of the FCC occurred in 1996. Actually, it started in the mid 80s under the Reagan administration, and then the Clintons, they finished us off. They passed it in 1996, and I felt like it was almost like when President Kennedy died. There was so much remorse in my soul, and there was so many people that were hurting just from, I mean, the guy died, but he was a great man. He was doing great things for the country. He was fixing to do something wonderful and take back our financial system away from the families that own the Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
But somehow, after he put $250 billion of U.S. notes in circulation, somehow his life ended. And talk about corruption, buddy. That corruption runs all of the networks, and it might. Oops, my alarm. I got a half hour before the next interview.
Gotcha.
Okay, sorry about that.
No worries.
But the point I'm making is that when it was deregulated and people bought up all of our radio stations, it bought up the opportunities that would have been there for young musicians to have been heard locally, to advanced honestly, without any payola,
right?
Without any Milli Vanilli shit, the lip syncing to something that you didn't even do, you didn't even play on,
right?
But that all made money. And since they have control of the media, the means by which people hear new music, they can prevent you from hearing the good stuff and give you all the fluff, all the BS. And that's kind of what has happened to our industry. But it's hard for a musician with any amount of talent to take it through and to press. But I tell people, just for the sake of who you are, brother, and what you have, play for yourself, and the right ears will hear what you are doing, and you will have opportunities. If you pray, I pray every day, brother. I'm a cussing Christian.
me too.
Yeah. So, I believe in God. I believe in Jesus Christ. But the love is what's missing in our whole society.
Amen.
In our community, and the forgiveness course, because that's what love is. But all this hate that's being pushed, we can combat that with good music, with the loving music that we get from in here. I'm going to reach up there and I'm going to touch your chest. Boom, right there, buddy. That's where it is. And we can change things. And maybe someday, who knows, we might re-regulate the FCC if we get somebody that got some balls between their legs and get them in office and stand up to the BS that has taken over the narrative.
What an analysis. Really, again, you're actually just really eloquently taking over the interview in a beautiful way. You're hitting all of my questions, which the other question that I had was your thoughts on the industry today versus back when you guys were popping off. And what I'd love to kind of touch on briefly is the Terry Knight relationship. It seemed like he was just one of those kind of sketchy characters that just was really well networked at one point. And there was a little bit of apprehension from what I've read with the history between you and Don and Mel at the time. Just kind of walk us through that time frame, if you could, just for a few moments, and expand on really how that happened with the Atlantic Pop Festival. And it just seemed like you guys knew him from the pack, and then these opportunities just percolated, and next thing you know, you're playing in front of 20-30,000 people.
Well, we were a fresh band. We had just started our 3-piece, and Terry Knight told Don Brewer, because Don Brewer kept in touch with Terry, and Terry had moved into New York City, and he had some friends who were attorneys, and they were doing the legal work for the International 1969 International Pop Festival in Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay.
So, I even as reluctant as I was, Brewer said something to me, because I said, Terry's just going to screw us.
So you were saying this as a late teenager. You had this like intuition about you. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
19 years old. And I said, Terry's just going to screw us. And he looks at me and says, well, at least we get out of Flint. And I thought, well, let's think about this, because I don't want to be somebody to hold the whole band back from achieving something that we could do together. So I thought about it, and I said, okay, let's hear what he's got to say. So he comes to Flint from New York City, got the band together, and had a meeting with us, told us that he really liked the music, because he had heard the recordings, cassette recordings we had that Brewer had played for him of the new music that I had written. And he says, I'd like to, get you guys in front of this audience down here in Atlanta, Georgia, when they have this pop festival. And he starts talking about, well, what are you going to name your band? And we hadn't really thought of it. He says, why don't you name your band the name of my song, Grand Funk Railroad? And as soon as he said it, I thought, man, that is a pretty cool name. That's a pretty hip name. Because it was taken from an actual railway system that operates and runs from Windsor, Ontario, just Ontario in general, because it would come from up across the straits at Sault Ste. Marie, down through Michigan and Ohio, called Grand Trunk and Western, which happened to be the railway system that took my dad and the fellow fireman's life back in 1959.
Wow.
So anyways, we said, yeah, well, let's call it Grand Funk Railroad. So we start talking about what we're going to do as far as recording. Terry had an in with a banker, because he had a gift of gab. He could hustle, he hustle. So he had this lady who was a banker, and she fronted the money for a recording session. We went to Cleveland recording, and we recorded the first album. And
was that on time?
On time.
Okay.
Yep. So then we had an opportunity to play in Hamburg County, New York, which is just outside of Buffalo, for the state fair. So we go up there. Nobody ever heard of Grand Funk Railroad before, of course. We didn't have any records out. We're just kind of this, band that rolled into town. But Terry knew somebody through this banking woman who got us on that gig. And we went up there. We didn't make any money. We played for free. But I'm telling you something, those people loved us. They loved the sound of our music. And that was our very first gig. And it was a few thousand people. But then the second gig was the Atlanta Pop Festival. And it was only a couple of weeks later, 4th of July, 1969, 110 degrees in the shade.
Jeez.
And we go on in front of 185,000 people. It's a lot of folks. And they were not all from Atlanta. They were from every state in the union. There were Canadians. There were people from all over. And they loved this three-piece band that got up there and opened the show for them. But we played for nothing because the attorneys who were doing the legal work for this Atlanta Pop Festival, Beldock and Kushnick, they took a reduced fee, from what I hear, for us to go ahead and open the show and see what kind of reaction we could get from the audience. Man, we moved from 12 o'clock noon the first day to 7 p.m. the second day to 11 p.m. on the third day under the lights. And we had the whole shooting match. We, everything they had to put a show on, it was focused on these three guys from Flint, Michigan, and the people, they loved us.
It's almost like the promotional dream, to have everybody centralized there. I mean, in a way, it sounds like that one festival. It's amazing because I come from obviously the social media world and I'm a millennial, and to think of how everybody was just condensed in that one area in that one weekend, and the opportunity that you guys had to capitalize on with that. That's just astounding to me. That's incredible.
Absolutely, brother Jason. It was like, pinch me.
Yeah.
Pinch.
Yeah. So from there, then obviously things probably really started taking off. You have that incredible hype. Were you guys even signed at that point?
No.
Wow.
We didn't have a deal. The guy couldn't even say our name right. He had 3 cracks at it. He was too high, I think. I don't know. Grand Frank Railway or something. And then, he never could say it right. And then I would say it to the audience.
Yeah.
Get on the microphone and say, we're Grand Funk Railroad. We're from Flint, Michigan. And they went, bam, bam, bam.
Did you ever have people come up to you like 20, 30, 40 years later saying that they were at that festival and they remember you guys? I'm sure there were times.
Yeah, brother. And just this last weekend when we were at Vet Fest over in Delaware, some people were, they were there at the Atlanta Pop Festival. They said, we were there at your first show, because that was kind of like what it went out at. Even though it was our second show, it was honestly our second show because the first was at that Hamburg County Fair. They were there, and they had driven down from New York where they were living at the time, but they were in Delaware this past weekend and told me about this. So I get that all the time. And people that were at Shea Stadium. I'm over in California and this guy comes up and says, man, I was at Shea Stadium. I camped out. I got my ticket, man. I was on the lawn there camping with all those hundreds of other people. It was great. It was a time when that kind of thing, it was honest, brother Jason. It was honest, honest. It wasn't spun up hype bullshit from some, corporate conglomerate. That's all they know how to do is hype. And push bullshit.
It was community. It was real community. Yeah.
Amen, brother. Amen.
Yeah. Well, I know that we probably have close to 15, 20 minutes left here, so I'm gonna keep it moving. I'd love to hit Shay real quick just to kind of talk about viscerally that experience. I mean, what are the odds of some band being able to have that, and for you to have that opportunity is just and still walking around after that, it's got to be an incredible, I mean, what was that like? How do you even describe that intensity?
Well, this band, this three-piece band from Flint, Michigan, Grand Funk, had a love affair with New York City. When New York City embraces someone, they show the love, and there is so much love in that city. You hear so much negative shit about New York City, and I'm thinking, what are you, crazy, man? That there's people there that are beautiful people that get it, and we associated with them, musically, and I always loved going out to eat in New York, and going to all the places. But when we played Shay, it was when I knew we were going to play Shay, I went, you got to be kidding me, man. Sid Bernstein, what a great guy. He was another part of the ingredient for the recipe for success is to have people who love you because they want to be part of your success. So that is what happened at Shea Stadium. Sid Bernstein said, man, I want to promote this. I know you guys can sell it out, blah, blah, blah. And that's what happened. Our billboard was up in Times Square. It took up the whole damn block, our three faces, huge billboard. And it was like, 15 minutes now. It was like, 50 grand a month, I think, is what the bill for that billboard was,
Right.
Cost to have it up. And stroke of luck, after it was up there for like 3 weeks, it was going into the last week, the billboard workers went on strike. And they were on strike for months. And so we stayed there free of charge. Thank you, Lord.
Yeah, really.
Free of charge for months. They saw our faces. And then when it came time to play Shea Stadium and sell tickets, dude, we did not have a hard time. No. Those people loved us. They loved what we stood for. They loved my music because I was just this young kid, 20 years old, writing that music, writing from my heart, with my concern for the world, my concern for my country, and my concern for what I saw was happening after I got up and started, flying around the world and seeing and hearing and feeling. And so I put it in song, and people loved me for that. They loved my songs. And we sold out Shea Stadium in 71 hours. Faster than the Beatles, of course. And the Beatles took 2 weeks to sell it out, and they used the PA system of the stadium to play through, where we brought in a PA system that was custom audio electronics. Jim Fackert, holy shit, man, we had a PA system, a real PA system, and we had a real opening act, a real rockin' band called Humble Pie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, classic. With Stevie Marriott and Frampton and
wow.
All the original guys in Humble Pie. And man, it's a memory for me. But when they started singing the refrain, the chorus, I'm getting closer to my home, all the 55,000 people singing that. And the focal point is second base where I am standing. And it's going, oh, as I'm telling you this, man, I'm getting goosebumps, dude. I kid you not.
Yeah.
That memory will never leave me, man.
Were you able to even hold the guitar doing that? Like, what were the emotions? I mean, were you nervous? How did you guys handle that? I mean, it's just an incredible, like, viscerally, me as a performer, that type of juice is just,
Yeah.
what is that? That's just
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, it is. Yes, I could, but I was, as they're singing it, I didn't even play.
Yeah.
I just stood there and I was soaking it up. I think I was being a little selfish at the time, brother.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
was soaking it up. And then when we went back into it, it was just the most beautiful thing. And I didn't realize that second base was the focal point of that half circle
Right.
that the audience sat in.
Right.
But wow, what a phenomenal place to be when the whole damn place is singing your song.
Unfathomable. It's just wild. It's just so wild. I always love watching the videos of that on YouTube. There's so much I'd love to cover. At this point, I'd like to dedicate the last few minutes to really some of the good stuff, which in my opinion is the spirituality component of your life, faith, dealing with adversity, and would just like to dedicate kind of towards the end of the interview now to talk about that. I know that you had a near-death experience at one point within the last decade or so.
Yeah.
And just some of your thoughts on some of this. And I'll just give you the floor here to kind of, ride that out. I don't even know if it's just an open answer, open-ended question of your thoughts and your wisdom.
Well, I appreciate that, brother Jason. And I hear where you're coming from. I hear your heart. I like to see a guy that is young like you. I'm 74 this year. In 2 days, dude.
74, 70. That's right. Yeah. Happy birthday coming up. 74 going on 29, it looks like, and feels like.
But I'm very appreciative of the opportunities that I have had. I am thankful to God. God gave me the song. Well, I think God gave me all my songs, but I prayed specifically for the song, I'm Your Captain, Closer to Home. I didn't know the name of it. I just prayed for a song that would reach and touch the hearts of those you want to get to. And so I got up in the middle of the night. I wrote the lyrics. I didn't know they were words to a song because I'm writing stuff all the time. Doesn't have to be a song. It just can be something that's just, I read it, 2 years later and I'm going, oh, maybe that's, I could add that or, part of what I'm doing. But I like being in touch with where we came from. The kingdom of heaven. It's not just, something that we're going back to. It's where we came from. And my perspective is that after my near-death experience is that we all started in the bosom of love. This earth, it's been manipulated. It has been fashioned by some pretty evil shit that it's not just the human aspect of, people fighting religious wars or this war, that way. There's always these wars. And if you think about it, man, the video games that came out and our young people that are under the influence of these video games and Hollywood with all of their damn war flicks and everything's got to be a freaking war. Even Avatar, for Christ's sake, is a war. It's a war. Lord have mercy. It just seems as though we are being programmed and led into this shit. And I really, I've had, that near-death experience, which gave me so much insight as to what our major problem is here. And it is debt consciousness, not just financial debt. Of course, financial debt has something to do with our debt consciousness, because the money that is created from nothing by the families that own the Federal Reserve, and then we have to attain that money to buy our food, to our sustenance, to pay our bills, to pay the car payment, to pay the mortgage, to pay the groceries, to pay for fuel. All of that indebtedness has slowed us down.
Yeah,
it really has. But not only monetary, there is the debt of unfulfilled expectation. Other people expect you to do things, you don't follow through, they put you on the shit list.
right.
There are so many forms of debt, but it is our responsibility to our own heart to set ourselves free from that. Nobody's going to walk up and say, hey, you're free. You have to discover this within yourself and set yourself free. You have to love yourself enough to set yourself free. And don't be indebted to anyone or anything. Never allow yourself to get behind that, because debt consciousness keeps us from the love that is real. The debt consciousness is fear. It is make-believe. It's made up by assholes. Seriously. It really, these people, these entities, these demonic beings are assholes. I'm serious, man. When we pass from our earth life in these earth years, when our earth years are done, we go back, man, it is paradise, brother. Ooh, it is paradise. And it's this far away right now.
Wow.
If we only knew and only lived in that conscious state, and we are the only ones that can set ourselves free. So I encourage those who follow you, who listen and watch your broadcasts, set yourself free. And you, brother, set yourself free.
Thanks, Mark. It means the world. And I know we got to get you ready to go for your next interview here. I always ask everybody this at the end. I think we already have the answer based on your last paragraph there, which was so eloquently said. But if you could go back in time to your 15-year-old self, knowing what you know now, what would you tell him?
Watch your ass.
Well said. Well said. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Farner. I mean, what else do I have to say? You have some dates coming up. We'll have the information in the description boxes below, markfarner.com, markfarner.com/tour. Any last words, sir, before we sign you off here?
It's all about love. Follow the love and you'll find your heart.
Amen. Well, thank you so much. And you guys been watching and listening to the Jason Damico Show with Mark Farner here. And we'll see you on the next episode. Peace.
If I don't see you in the future, I'll see you in the pasture, Jason.
Hey, that sounds good. I like that. I like that.
All right, buddy.
All right. Bless you. Thanks.
And you. Bye for now.
Bye.